his tactics and his schemes never change. They're always the same. They take on different modern disguises, but they never change. Notice how he comes to Jesus. Look at Matthew chapter 4, verse 1. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, what? If you are the Son. Now, Jesus, if you really, now we're not sure, are we? We're not really sure. But if you really are who you think you are, you hear it? Go back to Genesis 3. Now, Eve, honey, did God, are you sure God really said that? You might be confused, Eve. Let's talk about this. God, maybe that's not what God meant. And it's the old law of judo. Anybody in here taking judo? You watch two judo experts. Watch them. And they've got their gi on, and they're going at each other, and they're taking hold of each other's gi, and you know what they're trying to do? One is trying to get the other off balance. If a judo expert gets you off balance, you dead meat. He can throw you any way he wants to throw you if it gets you off balance. That's what the devil's doing here. His strategy is to creep in through doubt and to get them off balance. Now, notice what happens then when he does that. He uses the first lie. Chapter 3, verse 1. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden. You must not touch it or you will die. Now look at verse 4. You will not die. You will not surely die, the serpent said to the woman. Now, he's saying basically, God's a liar. God is not telling you the truth. You can't trust him. You'll not die. Trust me, Eve. If you eat of this fruit, you will not die. Now, let me say this, and you just mark this down. We won't turn to it for time. But in John, the Gospel according to John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John chapter 8, verse 44. Sometime tonight, look that verse up. John chapter 8, verse 44. Jesus, in referring to the devil, said this about him. He says, he is the father of lies. The father, or the originator of lies. But I want you to see what he's trying to do here. You'll not die. You'll not die, Eve. That's lie number 1. Now, let's read on. Verse 5. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. There's the second lie. Can't you hear him? Eve, let me tell you something. You're confused on what God said. Let me tell you. If you take of this fruit, you won't die. But the main thing is not only will you not die, but Eve, you will be like God. You won't even need him anymore. Now listen to what he's saying. As a matter of fact, Eve, there are things that God knows he doesn't want you to know. He's pulling the wool over your eyes. And so he doesn't want you to know these things. But I'm telling you, if you'll disobey him and if you'll take this, then you'll know the things he doesn't want you to know. Now listen. What he's saying is, Eve, you can't trust God. Don't trust him. You can't really trust him. He's keeping something from you. Now, listen carefully. Right here begins a dual motif or a dual theme that will run through the rest of the Bible. And it is this contrasting theme. Trust and distrust or non-trust. Trust or non-trust. What he's trying to get them, this is what all makes sense to me. What he's trying to get them to do is to break their trust from God, no longer trust him. And of course, we know what happened. And by the way, fellas, before your pride can inflate, and you can say, well, it was the woman who did it. if you go to, don't do it, but if you go to Romans chapter 5, Paul says it was the men who did it. Okay? So we can't blame the ladies for this. Okay? I just want to tell you, that's not biblical. You know the old statement, the Bible does say the husband's the head of the wife, but I think we all know that the wife is the neck, and the neck can turn the head any way she wants it to go. Now, listen carefully. But can't you see this tactic? Satan has lost the battle with God. He hates God. He doesn't trust God. He's out to get him, but he's lost the battle. So now he turns his schemes upon those created in his image, and he tries to say to them, you can be like God. Well, that's what he just tried and lost. You can be like God. Boy, he'd be a good used car salesman, wouldn't he? Getting them to buy something that he knows is not true and has already been unsuccessful. If you do what he says not to do, you won't die. You'll know things you've never known before. You won't even need him anymore. You can't trust him. And when they reached up and they took hold of that fruit, suddenly they broke trust with God. And something happened. There was a breach in their relationship. Do you know what that breach in their relationship is called? It starts another theme that will run through the rest of the Bible.